Hello everyone, and welcome back to another session of Dark Souls Remastered PvP and another weapon showcase. Today we are taking a look at the Silver Knight Straight Sword, which is a weapon that you can get from the Silver Knights in Analondo. Now this is a weapon that has always been one that I've enjoyed very thoroughly. It has a great moveset, it's got some decent damage, it's just a fun weapon to use in my opinion. So let's get started with the basics. This weapon requires 16 strength and 22 dexterity in order to wield. At plus 0 it has an E scaling in strength and a C scaling in dexterity, as well as a base damage of 175. Because this weapon does upgrade with Twinkling Titanite though, that's something you can take advantage of and get it to plus 5 very early once you're able to get the weapon, simply due to the fact that you can buy Twinkling Titanite from the Giant Blacksmith. That said, at plus 5, this weapon's scaling will not be changed, but its base damage will be up to 262, which is absolutely phenomenal for a straight sword class weapon. So, it is what it is. Now, with this weapon, you're also going to have some decent scaling with that C scaling, but it won't be the primary source of your damage. That base damage is really where the majority of it will come from. So, that's not a terrible thing. It's actually kind of a good thing in this particular case, because it makes the weapon viable for a lot more builds. Now, getting started with the pros, of course, I did mention the high base damage, I did mention the decent scaling. On top of that, though, this weapon has a great amount of reach to it, and with that, the moveset does take advantage of it. With your R2s, you actually take a step into them as well, so its reach is a little deceptive in that regard, because you get a little more than what you would expect. Now, aside from that, this weapon is able to be buffed, and that's actually a very beneficial thing as well. Because of its high base damage, it's open to more builds. Because it's able to be buffed, this weapon will excel on builds that have the ability to buff. So of course you could always use a Pine Resin or whatnot, but for mages with Magic Weapon, Great Magic Weapon, and Crystal Magic Weapon, or Faith builds with Dark Moon Blade and Sunlight Blade, this weapon is actually very dangerous because you don't need to invest too terribly much into your stats in order for it to be viable for you. Now, moving on from here into the cons of the weapon, there are some downsides to it, and that's the case with basically every weapon. So, one of the bigger ones in my opinion is the weight. It is a longer straight sword, it is the second longest one if I'm not mistaken, so it makes sense that it would weigh a little more than the shorter ones. However, 6 units does feel a tad excessive in my opinion, so, I mean, that's the same as a claymore and a bastard sword. It's just a little bit much, you know? Beyond that, the R2 speed is a bit slow, it is easily parried, there is a trade-off for it, it does deal higher poise damage, but it is still easily parried. And there are a few things that seem to have been changed with the remaster regarding this weapon. In the original, the R2 to R1, if the R2 stunned someone, the R1 follow-up would be basically a guaranteed hit. Unless they were wearing the Darkwood Grain Ring, they'd be able to flip away. Beyond that, though, it also would work in the way where if you did an R1 to an R2, the R2 would roll catch quite frequently because it seemed to go out a little faster. It doesn't do that anymore. So, either I am completely misremembering, which is entirely possible, or its speed was slightly changed in a similar fashion to the Claymore. So, it is what it is. It's a little unfortunate, but there's nothing to be done about that. Beyond that, though, there is no Divine Modifier anymore on this weapon. That is something that they did change with the original version of the game, so we can't really complain about it too terribly much. It's been that way for like a little over 6 years now. But it still is something that is a downside to the weapon. It was there, and now it's just not. And that's unfortunate, because there aren't many weapons in the game that have a built-in Divine Modifier. You still have the Silver Knight Spear, rather, but it would be nice if both Silver Knight weapons did. It would be nice if they were consistent in that regard. It would make sense lore-wise. It is what it is, but at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal. And that's really all I've got for this one, guys, so I hope you've enjoyed this one, found it helpful in one way or another. If you have, then please like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff, and I will see you guys next time.